Today is 808 day, and today we're going to be talking about the Roland TR-808, its versatility, and why it has become an icon in electronic music from hip-hop to dance, and why we use this wonderful machine. What's good, good people? I am Adal Jamil, your friendly neighborhood beatmaking instructor at Point Blank Music School here in LA. Let's go through a little brief history about the TR-808. Manufactured by Roland between 1980 and 1983, considered a commercial failure after only making 12,000 units. But after it got into the pawn shop market and it was cheaper and more affordable, a lot of the people that were digging the sound of the 808 went to go to those pawn shops, picked up those devices, and started creating the hits that we remember now, such as Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing, Africa Bambaata's Planet Rock, and used by countless of artists. It's now the staple drum machine in rap, trap, and hip-hop music today. The beauty of the Roland 808 is its unique sound, but it's how we customize that sound and make that sound our own that makes this instrument just versatile to use. We can use it on anything. I'm going to be using the software version found on Roland Cloud. We're going to integrate that instrument inside of Ableton, shape it up with some plugins to make it unique and our own. We're also going to sample the TR-808 and make a bass instrument out of that. Throw some splice sounds on it, make a hit, call it a day. For today's inspiration, we're going to do a little trap soul, inspired by Lil Durk's All My Life. So we're going to start by loading up the Roland TR-808 from Roland Cloud in our DAW. I'm going to be using Ableton, but process is pretty much the same anywhere, so you can still follow along. I programmed a drum pattern. I'll be honest, I just took Lil Durk's drum pattern and threw it in there. And I am going to throw this little session up on the internet so you too can have Lil Durk's drum pattern if you wanted to. Just your standard trap beat, ready to add some stuff on there. So how do we get that iconic, boomy, subby, aggressive, just nasty bass that the 808 has been famous for? I'm glad you asked, because I'm excited to show you how I created this. That nasty bass. We're gonna use a TR-808 to make it slap. So let's get to that. First, I need to create a sampler instrument. So I'm gonna go into my instruments in Ableton. I'm going to use sampler for this. And we're going to come back to this instrument. So I'm going to create a new instance of the TR-808. So I can save this one for the drums. Go back into my plugins, Roland Cloud, and we're going to drag it in. I'm going to create an audio track, and this audio track is going to get its input from the new TR-808 that we just created on track 6. And we're gonna name this track 808 Samples. So we're gonna turn this kick into a bass. So inside of the Roland TR-808, I'm going to turn my decay all the way up. Now we have this long, boomy sound. We're not done yet. Remember my tone all the way down. I want a pure sine wave as close as we can get. Getting closer, getting closer. Next, I'm going to open up my panel settings, and this is where things can get a little tricky. Since our bass is going to be a pitched instrument, we need to know what pitch we're going to be sampling. Since we have this tuning control that goes through a range of pitches, I'll tell you it goes from B0 up to B1. Well, how do you know that? I use a tuner, and that's what we're going to be using too. I'm going to go to my audio effects inside of Ableton. Under utilities, we have a tuner. Not just used for guitars and live bass, you can tune anything. I want to get as close to our fundamental pitch as I possibly can, and we're going to start with C. So the lowest C I can possibly get. Right now we're at C sharp. I need to go down just a little bit deeper. We're a little sharp. I'm gonna hold shift and get it down to -120. And that is the sweet spot. We are just a few cents above that C, but that's gonna be good enough for me. Now I'm ready to record and sample this note. I'm gonna create a MIDI pattern so that way Ableton can trigger my drum. And let's go ahead and give ourselves a 2-bar in length sample. Need to make sure my input is ready. And I'm going to mute it for now. Record arm our track, press record. There we go. Got 2 samples. I only need the first one. Make my length 2 bars. Right click, crop this sample, and we have our first sample. Now we can use this one sample and stretch it across. So I'm gonna open up a sampler, drag this clip in to our sampler instrument. I need to set the root of this to C1 because that is the note that we recorded. That is the quick and easy way to create that instrument, but I don't like quick and easy. So what I'm going to do, and what I've already done, is I'm going to sample every possible note that we can get out of the TR-808. But again, instead of having you watch me do that, I already did it for you. And I already have the samples in here. So if you guys want to use these samples, please do. And also share with me how you use these samples. And here are all the samples. I have C1, C#1, etc., etc., etc. We have a full octave worth of sounds that we can use to create our instrument. I went ahead and already did that. So we can drag and drop each of these samples into an instance of sampler. So I pitched out all of our samples in our zoning window. So I have C1, C#1, D, D#1, E, E#1, all the way up to B1, and making sure that the mapping is to a single note. Right? The problem that I ran into is that 1 octave just isn't enough. So what I did is repeated those same samples an octave above and an octave below so that we have a 3 octave range. I also did some micro detuning to make sure that the tuning is just about perfect and in pitch. And if you want me to go into more detail on how to create sampled instruments, please let us know in the comments and I will gladly show you how we can get really nerdy about how we create our sample and instruments. Once we have our samples laid out into our instrument, we can do some cool things like adding our filters. So I added a low pass filter using the PRD circuit because it just adds some really good color to the bass with a 31% resonance on that filter. And I sent that to a macro so that we can control the frequency of that filter to be bright, or we can make it dark. Your choice. I also added drive control for our filters. Right now, the drive is turned all the way up, so I like those gritty basses with a lot of character. If you want it to be a little more pure, you can bring that drive down. It still parties either way. In this instrument, in our pitch and oscillator tab, I also created a control to control how wide and how spread out the bass sound is. So if you wanted a more focused mono bass, bring this control down. Or if you want it to be a nice wide in your face kind of bass, and it opens up that space for you. I've also set the glide controls to glide, turn the glide on, and our glide is set to 111 milliseconds. So that way when we play our bass with legato, we get that bendy bass that is so popular right now. And back to our last macro, going back into our filter section, I've also added a macro so that we can control our attack of our bass. Do you want that bass to hit immediately, or do you want it to roll in and just a little bit smoother? So let's make something with this new bass. We're gonna add some samples from Splice, throw a bass line under that, on top of these drums. Let's see how it comes out. So we have our drum set up, we have our bass instrument ready to go. Let's throw some samples from Splice into our session, make a quick beat, and see what fire we can come up with. I went ahead and found some samples off of splice.com, and we're gonna be rocking with higher, higher, higher. We want to lift you higher. To get that trap soul vibe, we had to find some soul samples. I'm gonna start with the piano, so I'm just gonna drag that in. Do you have those artifacts, little distortions on that sample? We need to choose the right algorithm so that way that sample is a lot smoother. For samples that are full tracks that has a little bit of everything, I use Complex Pro. Pretty much for anything else, I use Complex. So we use this Complex algorithm. so much smoother. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and put that on loop. We're gonna make this a 16 bar loop. We're gonna play that with the drum pattern that we put together earlier. Bring down those chords a little bit. Ooh. We're almost done. we just need to add just a little bit. We have this bass that we created. Let's go ahead and add on top of that. So this sample is in C minor. So I'm going to be playing the notes of C minor, and I'm just going to be using my ear. We're going down, and then we're coming back up. So we're going from C down to B flat, down to A flat, and then A flat, going back to B flat and C. So our chord progression is minor 1, major flat 7, down to a major flat 6. That's in theory for you. And then we're going back the other direction. Major flat 6, major flat 7, minor 1. Let's go ahead and capture that. And let's make sure that we get all of what we played, the up and the down, the descending and the ascending. Let's bring that bass down in the mix a little bit. We can probably quantize this just a smidge. I'm not mad at it. This last beat at the end isn't correct, so we're just going to move that right there, lock that in. And this one more correction, I think we should be good. Yes, there it is. Higher, higher, higher. Drop that into the session. So same thing that we did with the piano sample. We need to make sure that we have the correct warping algorithm so that way we have smoother vocals with no artifacts. So let's go down to our warp, change the algorithm to complex. Let's see what it sounds like all together. All right, one last thing before I forget. Let's make sure that we have the proper loop settings correctly. Loop has been turned on. 16 bar loop to get all of everything. I think that's it. I think it's fire, and I want to take you higher. Let's call it a day. Higher, higher, higher. We want to lift you higher. Higher, higher, higher. We want to lift you higher. So there it is. We integrated the Roland TR-808 into Ableton, sampled the TR-8. We created a nasty, heavy bass sampled instrument using Ableton's sampler. After that, all we just needed is just a couple of samples from Splice to make this trap soul hit. So, happy 808. Enjoy the day. I want you guys to take these sounds, make them your own. We're gonna post a link down in the comments. As always, I am Adal Jamil. And if you want to learn about all things music, check out our website at pointblankmusicschool.com. Create, elevate, and I'll see you in the next video.